What's up, Whisper Nation? It's Wednesday, January 21st, and you're listening to episode 147, which is a special coaching changes episode of the Fantasy Whispers.
Right here.
I'm your host, Big Travy. You can find me on Twitter at Big Travy TFW. And as always, I am joined by the man, the myth, the legend, Johnny Gametime Hicks. You can find him on Twitter, Johnny_Gametime. What's going on, Johnny? How are you, man?
Dude, I'm really good.
Can't keep it together over there.
I can't keep it. I'm sorry. I'm like crying right now because I just realized that in the show notes that I was responsible for, I changed the date to the 21st, which is the correct date. But today is not Wednesday. Today is Thursday that we are recording this. So
look, I'm like Ron Burgundy. If you put it in the teleprompter, I will read it.
That's what I was saying. What's on the screen?
Listen, we could have just let it. We could have just let it go because technically, if you're watching this, it won't even be Thursday. It'll probably be Friday.
Yeah, probably.
So there's all that.
Hey,
there's all
to hear us out. To hear us out. All right.
Listen. Humans made up days. We're not even sure they exist, okay? We just made them up because we go around the sun and all that stuff. But other than that, Johnny, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing really awesome, Travis. I'm really excited to get back on the ones and twos, get some content coming back out. We got a lot of stuff to talk about, a lot of stuff that we're going to be going over the next few months, and an exciting content calendar that we're going to be rolling out here that we're going to share with Whisper Nation. So that's really exciting. Got us really pumped for the off season.
Yeah, before we jump into that calendar and kind of tell you guys what we've got planned here, if you want to follow the show, you should head on over to Twitter, search at TF Whispers. You can also find us on YouTube and Instagram searching The Fantasy Whispers. And you should definitely visit our website, thefantasywhispers.com. We're going to start putting off-season articles out. I'm working on one right now, my top 2020 most exciting players to watch. So kind of highlight some 2020 guys that were very exciting for me to watch that I think you guys should keep an eye on for next year, of course. And it'll depend on all their ADP, of course. We've also got swag over on the site, and then you can pre-order the draft kit starting, I think, probably in May. We'll probably let you start pre-ordering that draft kit for a discounted price. So all sorts of things. Make sure you're over there checking out the fantasywhispers.com. And then if you would feel so inclined to support the show, head over to patreon.com and search the Fantasy Whispers today. But Johnny, you talked about it a little bit. You alluded to it, what they call a tease in the business. We've got a new schedule for everybody. Obviously, if you followed us all year long, you're wondering where we kind of been. We did come back last week with a mock draft, or this last Monday with a mock draft. So we'll just walk you through the week here. On Monday, Johnny, we've got our mock draft Mondays. Okay, we're going to be going live, doing a mock draft on YouTube, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And that is going to be when we're going live for these mock drafts. Me, you, ARC, Austin Sear, as we like to call him, going to be going live with Whisper Nation, going through our mock drafts like we normally do. We can never get too many mock drafts, so we love pumping them out there. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube. Click those notifications. You'll join us there.
Travis, I'm not going to lie. Before we go in, I know you're going to tell the rest of the line or what we're doing, but I saw on a different, I'm not going to name the podcast, but I saw on a different fantasy football podcast, and one of the hosts was like, mock drafting. I don't like to mock draft. You guys know how I feel about that. It's a waste of time. And I was just blown away. I was like, how is it a waste of time? It's like practicing for a quiz.
I think I could guess who that was. I think I could guess who that was, but we won't get into that. No, look, yeah, you got to practice. I think you could. I don't think you can mock draft too much. I think what you got to remember is ADP is going to change, and it actually helps by mocking more, so you know where guys are falling and not. But diversifying your platform and doing all those things is all great ways to do that. But yes, mock draft Mondays are back every Monday on YouTube, 3 p.m. Eastern. Thursdays, we're going to have our full podcast like you're listening to right now released. We're going to have a clip of that podcast put out on YouTube as well. And, another clip of that will be showing up on Saturday. So we're going to have some things for you. If you missed the podcast, you can catch it over on YouTube and vice versa. And then we're really excited about this show. Flashback Fridays, we're going to do a live stream. Me, Johnny Gametime Hicks, ARC, Austin back, the mock draft crew. But we're going to look back at our 2020 mock. Okay, so we're going to show clips of those mock draft marathons, some of our most popular mock drafts that we did live on YouTube. And we might be able to get some guests on, too, that mocked with us last time and kind of put ourselves under the microscope and see what we did last year and how we feel about those takes this year. Johnny, I'm really excited about that show.
Yeah, man, it should be a lot of fun looking back, seeing what we did, what we didn't do, where we could have improved our strategy. I just think that we don't do this enough in our industry, and we could greatly learn from it. I mean, it would make sense. I mean, NBA players, football players, they all watch game tape to see what they did and then what they could possibly do differently. So I think it's going to be a fun exercise. I'm excited to do it with Whisper Nation and do it live because it's always fun hanging out with our peeps on the live YouTube stream. So I'm excited for that. And, of course, I'm hanging with my buddies and people in the industry. So what a better way to spend a Friday night than do that. So I'm really excited for that.
Yeah. We have not decided a time on that just yet, but we will get that out to you when we do. Just make sure you're subscribed over on YouTube and with us there. Turn those notifications on. Then you'll know, and we'll try to keep consistent with that. But that is our off-season schedule. We're probably going to run that through to the draft. We'll have some dynasty shows and things of that nature. If you have questions, make sure you're always asking us on all the social media platforms, and we'll help you out there. But speaking of questions, Johnny, you got a little bit of a question of the day today for me? Yeah,
I do. I have a question of the day for you as well as Whisper Nation. If you guys have an answer, leave it in the comments below. I'd love to look at the answers and see, Big Trav and I can run down some of the good ones. But here's my question for you, Travis. Keep trade cut. Who would you rather have take over your fantasy? We're in the off season, so it's we'll say dynasty roster, okay? Who would you rather have take over your fantasy dynasty roster for one summer? You got to keep one, you got to trade one, you got to cut one, right? Bill O'Brien, Adam Gase, or Jeff Fisher?
Oh, man. Well, I'm going to keep Bill O'Brien. And the reason for that is, say what you want about Bill O'Brien, he actually put out some decent offensive numbers. Fantasy football is based solely on offense, and he has produced. I mean, he did in Deshaun Watson's rookie year. He did a hell of a job scheming that offense for Deshaun Watson, and I think he's had a lot of fun pieces in his past. He may have traded them all away, but as a fantasy football GM, I like making trades too. Maybe not as bad as Bill O'Brien, but I'm going to go ahead and keep Bill O'Brien. I'm going to trade Adam Gase, I guess. And the only reason I'm going to do that is because Adam Gase is actually still getting calls from NFL teams. Like Seattle is interested in Adam Gase as OC.
Wild.
It's blasphemous, I know, but he is still – look, everybody outside of the NFL does not like Adam Gase. There are coaching staffs within the NFL. I mean, look at how long he stayed with the Jets. It's baffling, but apparently he is, touted as a decent mind in the NFL. So as much as I hate to say it, I'm going to trade him. I think he's got a little bit of value, at least amongst some NFL sources. And then I'm cutting Jeff Fisher because he's been cut for a while. He's been sitting at home. He's the prototypical 8-8 coach. I'm cutting Jeff Fisher.
So you're not gonna believe into anything he said when he put together Sean McVay's Super Bowl team, as he quote unquote likes to take credit for.
Is that what he said?
Yeah.
Well, he's not the GM, and he wasn't the GM when he was there either.
That's a good point.
I don't know why he likes to say he put it together. Maybe he helped the GM put it together, but I doubt it.
All right, I like that. I think I would probably agree with you. I think I would agree with those three.
Well, we want to know what you think, Whisper Nation. Make sure you comment below if you're watching on YouTube, and hit us up on social media if you are listening to the podcast. And make sure you're subscribed on all platforms. And now we're into the meat of the episode, Johnny, which is coaching changes. We thought we'd check back in with some of the stuff that has physically happened in the NFL. We've got a couple hypothetical scenarios, obviously 2 coaching positions still vacant, but we've got quite a bit of guys that we know are coming into there. So we thought we'd test the waters here a little bit with Whisper Nation. We'd get a feel for what we think these guys will bring to the table. Obviously, a lot of these guys, as you'll hear us talk about, these new head coaches are still assembling their staff. So we don't know exactly what some of these guys will exactly mean to the offense and to the skill position players that are important for fantasy. But we've got an idea of some stuff that we can be excited about. So, Johnny, why don't we start with Urban Meyer, probably the biggest name, probably the highest paid coaching acquisition. on one of the most exciting, if you're looking for an optimist view, one of the most exciting rosters to be a coach of, and that's Urban Meyer, Jacksonville Jaguars.
Yeah, you've got, arguably one of the most successful coaches in college football. A lot of people want to say, it's him and Nick Saban as the two greatest college football coaches. And it's kind of funny to try to think about and go down the rabbit hole of the speculation as to why Urban Meyers had decided to make the leap from college when he was so successful to the NFL. And, he did come out and say that basically the only reason he was willing to take the Jacksonville Jaguars side or deal was because it's the perfect situation for him. If you're looking at it, right? He's got the highest amount of cap space. He's looking at not only the number 1 overall pick, which is going to be Trevor Lawrence, which is, we've been waiting for years for Trevor Lawrence to come out of college. He's one of the highest prospects at the quarterback position since like Andrew Luck or Peyton Manning. They're saying he's that talented. And then, so not only does he have that first round pick, but then they always also have another first rounder and then 2 twos as well. And then they've got a bunch of other picks as well. Here's what the interesting thing is, Travis. When you look at him as a head coach, right, he's not going to call the plays on either offense or defense. He is if you talk around to people around the league, they'll tell you he is a raw kind of guy. He's like Gametime. He's like Gametime when I come on the show. I'm a raw type of guy, and I'll get you the best players, hyped up on your team, right? Well, that's Urban Meyer. So you look at the offensive coordinator. I think that's the key here. And a lot of people are speculating that's going to be Scott Linehan, who was the offensive coordinator in Dallas, who had Zeke and Dak. And then he was also the offensive coordinator in Detroit back when they had Megatron and they still have Matthew Stafford, right? So he's been on very productive offenses that have been able to move the ball. Now, has he been able to get the best potential out of those players? That could be argued, right? There were some years where Ezekiel Elliott was very efficient under him, and so when you're looking at guys like DJ Chark and Robinson, I think you've got to like the outcome or outlook as of right now, as of recording this. Travis, what do you think?
Yeah, so I love the things you hit on. So let's start with the rallier of men or the leader of men or the rah-rah type of situation. If you're looking at the NFL as a whole, it's definitely morphed into more of a college-style game, especially with offenses tailoring to these players' skill set. So presumably they take Trevor Lawrence. That's your QB. You have 11 picks, as you alluded to. That's 11 young guys coming in, 11 rookies. So who better to lead this young group of men than a guy who is so skilled and so proven in leading young college men? So I think that bodes well for Coach Urban Meyer. I think his decorated record, as I just talked about, 3 times he's a division FBS national champion, 2006, 2008, 2014. His coaching record, Johnny, is 0.08 of a point. He's 187-32. I mean, that's a massively good record in college. And then in bowls and big games in college, 12-3. So you really like what you see out of Urban Meyer as the coach. You did talk about him not calling the plays, but this is a guy who's been a huge proponent of the run-first spread offense. Well, you mentioned the Linehan hire. Linehan is actually an old mentor of Urban Meyer's. When he went to Bowling Green, Linehan was the guy who he went to study to see what the spread would look like, which is an offshoot, obviously, of the West Coast offense. And then you talked about the players he's coached before. So what's the track record maybe with quarterbacks? Alex Smith at Utah, and in the year that Alex Smith was the first round number 1 overall pick. That was a coach that was a player that Urban Meyer coached. You've got Tim Tebow in his Heisman winning year. You've got some of these guys over at Ohio State. Joe Burrow briefly. You talked about Ezekiel Elliott, Paris Campbell, J.K. Dobbins, Terry McLaurin. So not just the QB, some of these skill position players, which we love to see for fantasy. I'm really excited. It's hard not to be excited. I know we talk a lot in the industry or in the football industry about college coaches translating. I actually think Urban Meyer has one of the best shots to translate in a long time. just because of his record matched with. I think the marriage is really right here, Johnny.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this.
Yeah, it should be a good one. And if I'm Trevor Lawrence, I'm excited. If I'm Jacksonville, I'm excited too. But Florida people don't really need all that much to be excited about. They're out there going crazy as it is. So would
you be more excited in? Let me just ask you this before we move on. Are you more excited in Robinson now because of this hire?
Yeah, Robinson, I'm excited about the offense in general. Laviska Shenault is a guy I'm excited about. James Robinson, you talked about DJ Shark. Literally get a quarterback in there because they've got some skill position players. And I know Eifert's hurt and dinged up a lot, but that guy could get exciting too if we get a decent quarterback in there as well. But I think the biggest thing for Jacksonville, and we'll talk about this with a couple of the other head coaches, is the change of culture. Jacksonville has been a losing franchise for so long. So if really he's not going to call plays on either side of the ball, that means his whole job is culture. His whole job is leadership. And I'm excited about that if I'm a Jacksonville Jaguars fan. Yep. Well, the New York Jets, despite all their efforts to try and ruin their season and ruin their shot at getting Trevor Lawrence, which they successfully did, they did make a really good hire. I applaud this hire. They hired Robert Saleh of the formerly of the San Francisco 49ers, now coaching the New York Jets. So Johnny, initial reaction here on the Robert Saleh hire.
I really like it. That Jets defense has potential. They've picked many defensive players in the first round as of recently. I'm excited that you finally have Sam Darnold out of the way of Adam Gase. So, and there are also the potential rumors that Deshaun Watson could be traded to the Jets, and that could be a deal with. Do you see that saga? That was wild with Deshaun Watson liking the tweet or whatever. So that'll be interesting. I do like the fact that they're bringing in Mike Lafleur, who is Matt Lafleur's brother. Matt Lafleur, of course, head coach of Travis's favorite team.
Cram it in your cram hole, Lafleur.
Exactly. It was funny. I saw another tweet on Twitter. Forgive me, I don't remember who did it, but it was like the Lafleur brothers are doing pretty well, and it was like Matt Lafleur. Then it had Mike Lafleur, and then it had Lafleur from Dodgeball, and it was like, all right, that was Peter Lafleur. Yeah, Peter Lafleur. I was like, that's pretty good. But yeah, I mean. You have to think he's going to be very similar to how his brother coaches, has a similar coaching style. So you definitely
and it's not just that he's Matt LaFleur's brother. He's also been within the Kyle Shanahan scheme. So it's all going to be that same the Sean McVay style where we're going to do jet sweeps, we're going to do motion, we're going to be multifaceted, and that has to excite you. I love that you brought up Mike LaFleur here as the OC.
Yeah, I definitely think that right now, talking about players that, it's January, people might not be thinking as much as about the offseason. I do think that Jeff Wilson is a name to watch out for. I do think that they could bring him over to the Jets. They are looking for a running back. Jeff Wilson looked very good. He knows the system. So he might be a guy you might be able to get right now for very cheap or relatively inexpensive. That could actually end up being a big move looking back next year, and he'll be someone interesting to see.
Do you have a price range of dynasty pick that you'd be willing to give up for a Jeff Wilson?
Honestly, you might be able to get him for a third, just because of the unknown of where he might go, and I definitely think he's worth that kind of gamble because
the upside's there because if he can capture the starting role. Look, I mean, you just talked about it with LaFleur. Even with LaFleur, though, Saleh is a defensive guy. He's going to want to have a commitment to the run game.
Yeah.
So they're going to have the commitment to the run game. You're going to see proven track records of Shanahan, McVay, LaFleur, the older brother, with really good run games. So it's going to be interesting. You've hit on a couple things I wanted to just talk about a little bit here, Johnny. You talked about the QB situation with Darnold. So we have to watch this carefully. I'm not so sure that's what the Jets want to do, but for now, that's what they're showing. They're saying we're going to keep Darnold. We're going to try and commit to him. I think that's good for them. Maybe shop that second pick. Maybe get line help. We'll have to see what they do. This is one of the situations you're going to have to monitor closely. Monitor because of Jeff Wilson as well. Is he going to end up being the guy? You're going to have to take a look and kind of watch that. But I'll tell you right now, if LaFleur gets Darnold going or they somehow make a trade for Deshaun Watson, there's some interesting, sneaky talent at the pass catchers here. Jamison Crowder, Denzel Mims, Brashad Perriman, assuming that Perriman and Crowder come back with Denzel Mims. I mean, there's actually some volume to be had here in this offense. And don't forget, I hate to be that guy, Chris Herndon. He's a guy that we've tried to hype up, but it hasn't had the offense do it for him. There's a situation here where this offense makes a decent bounce back in that division. So I'm excited about the Saleh hire. I wouldn't go too far as to say I trust in it because it is the Jets still. But from one non-trustworthy franchise to another, we'll go to the Detroit Lions, Johnny, and they hired maybe your lookalike, Dan Campbell.
I mean, he is pretty jacked, so from that standpoint, but other than that, I don't know. Let's just give the little bit of rundown because a lot of people probably don't know who Dan Campbell is. He was drafted in 1999 by the New York Giants, former tight end. He replaced Joe Philbin, one of Travis's former boys for the Green Bay Packers as well, who was the head coach at the time of the Miami Dolphins. Did that after week 4. He went to a 5-7 record from then on. In those 12 games, there were 7 games where they rushed for 100 yards or more. That was Lamar Miller's best year as a running back. And the offensive coordinator during that time was Zach Taylor, who is and we all know who Zach Taylor is now, the head coach of the Cincinnati Bengals. Always fun to see these coaching trees and where they're weaving out now. And so you really want to see there's no there's only speculation as of right now as to who the offensive coordinator for Detroit will be. So I think that's kind of an interesting piece for Detroit as far as what we could expect. But Detroit could be in for a long offseason. They're saying there are rumors that Matthew Stafford could get traded. And then they hired this guy who, very limited experience and didn't really wow a lot of people, Travis, to be honest with you, when he was coaching. But what do you think about him? I mean, I kind of feel bad for Detroit Lions fans right now.
Yeah, Dan Campbell was kind of the out of left field hire, but I'm trying to make a little bit of sense of it. If you guys can't remember Dan Campbell, remember that he looks like South Park's PC Principal. I don't know if you guys remember PC Principal, but he was all jacked with the Oakleys. And that's what Dan Campbell kind of looks like. But this guy actually has some high up, Johnny, you mentioned coaching tree and the way those branches leaf out or what they do there. This guy's got ties to Bill Parcells, Tony Sparano, Sean Payton. He just served as Sean Payton's assistant head coach for a long time. So that tree is a very touted one. You like that. But really, Johnny, what this was a culture change hire. And they just did this with Patricia, I believe. They thought they were going to get a culture change more like the Patriots. It didn't end up that way. But here's a guy who, definitely probably could get it done. I just want to quote what he said in his opening press conference. And honestly, it's pretty good. He's like, this place, because he played a little bit for Detroit. So okay. he had some time played. So when he knew the job came open, he was really itching to get here. And he said, this place has been kicked. It's been battered. It's been bruised. And I can give you coach speak all day long. Hey, we're going to win this many games. None of that matters if you don't want to hear it anyways. You've got enough of that shit. Excuse my language. This team is going to take on the identity of this city. This city's been down and it's found a way to come up. It's found a way to overcome adversity. We're going to kick you in the teeth. And when you punch us back, we're going to smile at you. When you knock us down, we're going to get up. And when we get up, we're going to bite a kneecap off.
Oh, wow, dude.
I don't. Look, this is the quote I got from his press conference.
I'm a little motivated right now, but
yeah, dude, Johnny's ready to go. No, but just to hit it home, and we'll say this about defensive guys all the time. He is obviously not a defensive-minded guy, but I think he's going to have it. We saw it in Miami. He's going to have a commitment to the run game, and if you're the Lions, you saw what DeAndre Swift gave you. You're going to try and lean on that as well. We'll see. I'm not too optimistic. It is the Detroit Lions. Being a Packer fan, I know what they're capable of.
And the other thing I will say before we get really overly excited about I'm still excited about DeAndre Swift. Don't get me wrong, but even that year when Lamar Miller had his best season, Travis here's another. I'm going to bring this one back. Liv Lafleur he was also there, and he was splitting carries with Lamar Miller as well. So it was still a 2 running back kind of system. So, but again, we need to still solve
I think that Swift early in his career needs that right now.
Mm-hmm.
He got dinged up a little bit. You're going to need a thunder to the lightning a little bit, and we can see his efficiency go through the roof if that's the case. Be a Kamara light, so to speak. And once again, not to just like Dan Campbell spent some time in Sean Payton watching that offense. Sean Payton's always been a run-first guy. You could see a commitment to the run here in Detroit, so that should be exciting for those who have Swift in Dynasty or want him in redraft again this year. All right, we're going to move on to the Atlanta Falcons, who hired their guy, Arthur Smith, who spent the last 2 seasons calling plays for the Tennessee Titans. Johnny, I'll let you start a little bit with a little profile on Arthur Smith, and then I wanted to top into what I think this means for fantasy football.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to introduce you guys to, you find many inspirations out there. You really do. But if you want to be something, you should look no further than looking at the resume of one Arthur Smith. Because when I tell you this, you're going to be like, wow, I can do anything. All right. Well, I'm not trying to put him down. This is pretty cool, actually. So he started back in 2007 as a defensive quality assistant. All right, that's how he started in football, defensive quality assistant. And then, he spent a couple of years there. And then in 2011, he goes to the Tennessee Titans, and he becomes the defensive quality control coach there. And then he just works his way up. I mean, offensive line tight ends coach, assistant tight ends coach, then the offensive coordinator over the last 2 years. And Travis, what's so impressive is that this guy has taken a quarterback and Ryan Tannehill that, he was showing flashes, and we all joke about the Adam Gase umbrella and how horrible Adam Gase makes players look. But, I mean, he's really made Ryan Tannehill flourish, as well as his offense. Specifically, we've talked about the numbers of Ryan Tannehill compared to Pat Mahomes and how they're very comparable. And so I am extremely excited about this, because you're looking at, he's already come out and said he's going to be calling the plays. You look at the pieces that they have in this offense. They've got Matt Ryan. We know the Atlanta offense, right? Now it'll be interesting to see if Matt Ryan and Julio Jones are still there next year. There are rumors that they might get traded. I doubt they do. But I'm excited for this. I really am. I do think.
Yeah, this is definitely one of the hires that you could see makes a lot of sense for both sides. So I like what you said there. You kind of showcased that, but we've got to look at what Smith has done with the Titans. And so look at 2019 when he first started calling plays. 3rd in rushing yards per game, 10th in points per game, 25.1. Tannehill finished as the QB 10 that year in points per game, and that's what he was missing 4 games that year because Mariota started, right? A.J. Brown finished as the wide receiver 9. You look at 2020, they were 3rd in total offense, Johnny. Ranked higher than the Green Bay Packers this last year. 396.4 total yards per game.
Did that burn?
30.7. No.
Oh, okay.
Points per game. So one of us are still in it. So. 30.7 points per game is the 4th best in the NFL. Tannehill was the QB 7 in fantasy with a full year. Derrick Henry, RB1, A.J. Brown, wide receiver 10. Now, look, here's the thing. Atlanta right now, as it stands, does not have a Derrick Henry. And I think that has been a big part of Arthur Smith's success. But I will say this, a Matt Ryan, a Julio Jones, and a Calvin Ridley aren't a bad swap either. And so if you get Arthur Smith to really dial it in and get simpatico, so to speak, with Matt Ryan, you're going to have a situation that's going to be very nice for fantasy football. So I am excited about this. We'll have to see what they do at running back position. That's what I'm probably most intrigued on.
Let me ask you this, because our paths have met in a very similar fashion. Where I fully expect Atlanta to draft a running back, if Najee Harris goes there, or one of these other top running backs. Are a 3rd, 4th round redraft? Where is that?
Yeah, somewhere around there. But you could also make a case depending on what happens with the other guys on the roster and what Arthur Smith says. I mean, look at the volume Derrick Henry got. I know it's Derrick Henry, but like, let's talk about Arthur Smith being multifaceted because he can marry so much to the run. I know it's Derrick Henry, but this guy didn't give a lot of snaps to the backups at all. And so for me, I think you could push second round if the marriage is right, depending on the rookie running back. We'll have to see how it shakes out, their health, the prototype for the running back. But yeah, I think third and fourth round would be safe if it's one of these bigger named running backs that they get. Well, one of the smaller names in the head coaching circle, this was really a surprise hire for me. Johnny, you were talking about the Dan Campbell, the Arthur Smith resume. Brandon Staley's resume is probably smaller, and he got hired by the Los Angeles Chargers. I would say I was shocked by the hire, but it is the Chargers. I feel like they could have hired anyone at this point. There's somebody in Washington, D.C. who's out of a job now. Who knows? Maybe he could have got a call. But literally, Brandon Staley is and if you don't know who this is, I don't blame you. No, he was the defensive coordinator for the Los Angeles Rams last year, which they had some historic numbers. They were the number one defense in the NFL last year, so you understand maybe why they wanted to catch this. But, Johnny, once again, another Sean McVay, barely touched Sean McVay, smelled his cologne, was at his house one time, used to cut his lawn, guy that gets hired.
Yeah, and then this is great. We'll see if it's great. But what's the most comical about this is because you talked about and alluded to the fact that he doesn't have like a long history of coaching, being around coaches and stuff like that. And so what he did was he's a defensive guy, so he asked the Rams if he could interview the Rams offensive coach assistant Kevin O'Connell, and the Rams blocked it, and they said no. It's a no-go. It is smart, but it's like, oh man, it's a little brutal. He's like Sean.
Just imagine you see the brass for the Chargers and the Rams like passing each other in the hallway at SoFi Stadium, like glaring at each other. Yep. It's like, no way I'm giving you him.
Yeah, like you already jumped boat. I'm not giving you another player here.
Exactly.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see who they end up hiring as the offensive coordinator there. As far as Brand Staley, I do think the Chargers have a history of kind of hiring defensive-minded head coaches. So, and the fact that now with them blocking Kevin O'Connell, now things can change. They said that, the Rams could change their mind. I would doubt it. But as of right now, it's looking like they're going to retain the offensive coordinator from last year, Shane Steichen. I don't know if I said that right. And
that seems to be.
And then the quarterback coach as well, Pep Hamilton. So that is good for guys that you might be looking at for this offense, because it shouldn't miss a beat. Even though there is a new coach, they might just get a little bit more conservative on calls. But I think Austin Eckler, this is good for him. And you looked at what Sean McVay kind of did on offense as well. He might try to implement a little bit of that, which is good. He tended to go with kind of a one running back kind of approach. So I think this is a really good move for Austin Eckler that benefits him the most.
Yeah, this is kind of a strange one on the surface. You look at it, you're like, why did they do this? They were young and they're a coaching hire, but usually it's been these young offensive guys. I mean, you look at Staley, he's only had 1 year last year above an assistant rank. So he only had 1 year as a defensive coordinator. And he had Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey. So that helps a lot.
I mean, you do have Bosa and...
You do have Bosa, right, and some of these other pieces within the Chargers. So I really like that they did this, because if they're saying that Herbert is the most important thing to the franchise, why not really button down the defense that could help assist Herbert in his development? So I like that hire for that sake. Plus, you look at what Staley's done in his assistant time. This is a Vic Fangio disciple. He spent among some of the greatest defensive minds and teams over the last 3 years. Chicago, Denver, LA are where he spent some of his time. Those are some good teams to model your defenses after. So really like what they did there. Don't know what to expect. Not a hire that I saw coming here. We'll need to see who his OC ends up being. You said it, maybe the guys they retained from last year. But I did like what you said there. Herbert's development I like. Also Eckler's contract plus Eckler's style of running. This should be really good for Eckler this year. A little bit more confident, I'd say, even in Eckler than I was going into last year because we just didn't know what we had out of Herbert in the offense. All right, so our last two spots here are the Houston Texans. We won't spend too much time, and the Philadelphia Eagles. We won't spend too much time on these guys, Johnny, just because we don't know who it's going to be. Houston, obviously, we'll talk a little bit about here. So much uncertainty swirling around them with Deshaun Watson, who may be on his last leg there with them as far as trusting ownership. And so far, the Houston Texans have really interviewed a lot of people, but I think the big names to watch here for the Texans are Eric Bieniemy from Kansas City, who they finally interviewed after getting called out in the media by Deshaun Watson, and then Josh McDaniels of New England. I think the best fit is Bieniemy, Johnny. If you're the Houston Texans, you need to hire him. You need to keep Watson, hopefully. This plays to your team's strength, too, because your strength is the offense, as weird as that sounds, because it's not the best offense. You have Deshaun Watson. You have a couple pieces in the wide receiving core. You have some things. You still have David Johnson. He could have 1 more year, 2 more years with you there. You like that. And then if you look at if you're looking at Bieniemy versus McDaniels, the Reed tree versus the Belichick tree looks a lot better right now. Yeah. Reed's tree as assistants that have gone on to coach well, it looks a lot better. And so I would be more excited about Bieniemy than Josh McDaniels.
I do agree that I think that Bieniemy would be excellent. I do think Josh McDaniels as well would be intriguing for the fact that, he took Tim Tebow and made it to the playoffs there. Now, does that make you super, super excited to, pick him as your head coach? Probably not, but he's got a lot of experience. He's played it with Tom Brady.
I love that if we're selling Josh McDaniels in the board meeting, you're like, what? Tim Tebow?
Yeah,
he took Tim Tebow.
If you can take Tim Tebow to the playoffs, you can do a lot. You're no Adam Gase, all right? I'll tell you that, all right? Yeah. But again, it's just unfortunate because if I'm a head coach and I'm just putting on my, fantasy football GM quarterback, Monday quarterback, chair, whatever they call it these days, I don't want this position. You got a very nice, Deshaun Watson, top 5 quarterback in the league, but he's extremely unhappy, and he's already made it known that unless my name is Bieniemy, then he's not going to be happy with me. And then, you don't have draft picks because Bill O'Brien sent them all to other teams. And then their draft, their cap space isn't, I don't know exactly where they land as of right now, but I don't believe they have a tremendous high cap space. So it's not very appealing, unfortunately. But if they give Bieniemy, all right, we're going to give you 5 years to turn this around because we gave Bill O'Brien that long, then I think that he could eventually turn this around and get Deshaun Watson back on board if he's the head coach. I think from a Houston Texans standpoint, Travis, their only option basically looks like Bieniemy.
Yeah, well, and if it's not Bieniemy, maybe you do give either whoever it is the extended amount of time, and you trade Watson, and you just try to get a king's ransom for Watson, and really commit to the rebuild here. I think Bieniemy is the short-term and long-term best fit because you get him in there, he could keep Watson happy. You could turn this around slowly with Watson, trying to turn that around. But if you're going to sail on Watson, it really doesn't matter as long as you get a guy like McDaniels or Bieniemy that you think can carry an offense for this amount of time.
I think if you're a David,
Philadelphia,
I'm sorry to cut you. I think if you're a David Johnson roster, you're really crossing your fingers for Bieniemy because he would keep him really relevant, I think.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Philadelphia Eagles are the next and final open head coaching position. They've interviewed Bieniemy as well, Josh McDaniels, but also Kellen Moore. And so, Johnny, I'm actually going to make a case for Kellen Moore being the best fit here for the Philadelphia Eagles. I think that if you look at the spread offense that he's ran in Dallas, the numbers that he's put over since he called plays last year and the year before, they're good numbers. And I know that they've had a loaded roster for quite some time, but Kellen Moore has done his job as a former quarterback and really just seeing the field. And if I'm Philly and my job is to fix Carson Wentz because I'm keeping him, I would go with Kellen Moore. This also hurts a divisional rival. You take Kellen Moore from the Dallas Cowboys and you look at keeping and fixing Carson Wentz because all that money's on the book. Give me Kellen Moore, and I think you could actually keep Jim Schwartz if he's there still for the defense. He's done a great job over the last few years with that defense. So I think Kellen Moore makes a lot of sense to me here.
I really like that pick. I think that if he were to come to this offense, you could see this offense really come alive because it'll shorten up the passes for Wentz. They'll get a couple more wide receivers in there that aren't, these older guys. And I think that, and then it's also nice that you do have the backup there and Hurts, that if something does, who's more comparable to Dak than Hurts right now, Right. You could say he's a lot like Russell Wilson. Okay, I'll give you that comp as well. But, Dak and him have a lot of similarities to me. And so I think that if you get...
Dak and him have similarities to you?
No, I wish.
Are you saying your comp is Dak Prescott, dude?
That would be pretty. No, I'm not saying that, but I would love it if that my comp was was him. But I think that if you get a guy like Kellen Moore, and like you said, I think one of the biggest undermining thing is that you're taking a divisional head coach that knows a lot about a team, and you now have him on your coaching staff. I think that that's a really big move in a game where you're always trying to find even the slightest advantage to help you win a week of a game, So I think that's a great move there.
Yeah, Bieniemy for Houston, Kellen Moore for Philly. I think those are the best options for fantasy football as well. And so I think those will be the best options to get those skill players some more points. But we want to know what you think, Whisper Nation. Make sure you comment below or on any social media platform who you think the coaching hire of the year is going to be, who will make the most fantasy football impact. As always, you can find us on Twitter at TF Whispers and on all social media platforms by searching the Fantasy Whispers. For Johnny Gametime Hicks, I'm Big Travy. We are the Fantasy Whispers. We're out. Peace.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Whisperers podcast. You can hear more from John and Travis on Google Play, SoundCloud, and iTunes. You can also follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at TF Whisperers.